What do you make of this ranking so far?
Well, the rabbit is out of the hat, and it is what it is. We do rank good in certain areas, as well as ranked very, very poorly in other areas.
Yeah. So when you look at the reports, I'm seeing some of our. Let's start with some of our best performers here.
Sure.
I'm seeing we're doing well based on from the 12 pillars the World Economic Forum is using to rank us. We're seeing we did quite well. Came in the 30th position in market size. We also did quite well when it comes to product market. When you see these two business dynamism as well, we also did quite good in that. Yeah. What does that speak to our environment here?
You know, looking at the report, what I try to do is to look at areas that we ranked best, 5 key areas, just like you mentioned: market size, labor market, business dynamism, innovation capability, and product market. These are some of the areas that we have natural attributes, what you call comparative advantage, by virtue of our population. I mean, it goes without saying that if you have a large population, then you're bound to have, you know, large labor market. But the one that truly strikes me, quite frankly, is the business dynamism and innovation capability. We've seen advent of, you know, a few IT companies, fintech especially. Google is making some strong push into the system. There might be something that they know there that we all don't know, and so that's a good thing. But on the other hand, we do have areas that we actually didn't rank too well. You know, things that has to do with macroeconomic stability. That's quite a challenge. Ironically, the financial system, we also didn't rank too well. I'm quite surprised at that, given that we have a robust stock exchange market and good regulatory agencies. We also did not rank well in infrastructure, neither did we do well in ICT adoption and skills. However, on ICT, I must point out, we do have quite a sizable telecom penetration. You know, we have over 150 million lines, and then we also have a surge in internet, you know, usage and subscription and the rest of it. So I think the numbers here on ICT adoption is quite surprising. I would have thought that, you know, would have done better. But if you look at the overall size of the population vis-a-vis all this data, then we're bound to do better in some areas and then worse in other areas.
I want to pick on one of the ones on the bottom side. So I'm looking at institutions. Basically, we've had this talk for a long time about, you know, how we need to make our institution build strong institutions in the country. You know, as we're heading into election period, and we're seeing, you know, when you look at the 3 tiers of government, we're looking at the judiciary on one hand, we're looking at the executive on one hand, and then you look at the you know, all the institutions that hold the government together. How do you think, you know, with this ranking, what challenge do you think it poses for the next administration coming in?
You know, I'm sure you would recall this wise saying by Bill Clinton, former president of the US, where he says Africa needs strong institutions and not strong leaders or strong you know, men in office. What that tells you is that the institutions are the bedrock of every nation, every society. Your governance structure is built on institutions, your electoral system, your judicial system, and so on and so forth. What we've seen, obviously, had been quite a bit of squabbling between the you know, 3 tiers of government, where one feels the sense of autonomy and doesn't want an incursion. But overall, I think that we have not built the strong type of institutions that we require for our business you know, processes, for our governance structure, and the rest of it. And that's where there's a lot of emphasis that has to be.
Even on the body of the report, so the World Economic Forum mentioned that usually there's a strong correlation between competitiveness and income level. I'd like you to speak to this point.
Well, usually in a society, if you have high income level, you know, wages are relatively high. Yes, that can provide the impulse for competitiveness because businesses can ride on that. Human capital becomes more robust. People are, you know, happier when they are better paid, and that translates to positive consumer sentiments and the rest of it. But in our own case here, of course, we know that there have been issues with, you know, minimum wage, trying to increase that, make it a livable wage, so that the more people have a sense of belonging, you know, by virtue of how much they earn, the better workforce you get out of them, better productivity and that translates to positive sentiments in the overall economy.
I'm looking at two of the indices here that speak directly to human capital. We're looking at health and we're looking at skills.
Yeah.
Sadly, on these two, we're on health, we're ranked 119th.
Yeah.
On skills, we're on 124th.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot has been said about human capital development. A lot has been said about the importance of, investing in people, investing in education, investing in healthcare, and all that. What's the take home for the present administration?
Well, you would recall the last visit of Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, and co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Foundation, where he sat in on one of the sessions with the vice president, and he clearly stated that you can invest all you want in infrastructure, build roads, bridges, and the rest of it, but if people don't have cars, they're not going to ride on those roads. So absolutely, the need for investing in human capital, it's absolutely imperative. You have to improve healthcare delivery, beginning from maternal and all the way to infant care, even prenatal. And also you have to invest in education. If you look at our budget on an annual basis, the ratio of spend in education and healthcare is always below the globally recommended norm, and that's quite a challenge for us.
It's going back to the budget, we're seeing 2018, we've had an abysmal performance so far. This is we're almost at the tail end of the year, and we're only just getting performance levels for 2017 budget. Sure. When you look at these structural problems that we have in India, what's the way forward?
I think that one thing that I've noticed in the budget regime is the releases. It's one thing for you to budget funds. It's another thing for you to be able to generate those revenues. Remember, budget is projection. So when you project, you have to go scout for the money. When you bring in the money, then the process of releasing these funds, whether for infrastructure and for capital expenditure, is very critical. We have always not performed as we should, as we ought to, in terms of those releases. But guess what? On the recurrent side of things, you have to spend on a regular basis. You have to pay salaries, you run the government apparatus. So you achieve more success in terms of releases for operating expenditure, for recurrent expenditure, as opposed to spending in infrastructure in the capital expenditure part of your budget, where you will actually get the impulse, the driver of the economy. So I think this is a recurring decimal that has been plaguing our country, and I think there just has to be a better way of doing things. We have to review the whole process. Of course, I understand the fact that you must curb wastages, you must follow due process in budgetary allocations and releases, but there has to be a better way. It must be fast-tracked.